If you are looking to move forward in your life towards your authentic dreams without sacrificing your emotional health, your nervous system, your relationships, or your spiritual health, well, you are in good company. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Courtney Lancaster, and this is a safe space for creatives. This is the Heal Create podcast. I want to tell you guys something that I just learned about my husband who edits these podcasts, which is that I found out that every time I pause speaking on my podcast recording so that I can take a drink of water, he has like a irrational spike of rage because it sounds so disgusting on the microphone. Hilarious. And now it's like all I can think about if I'm going to drink water during this podcast, which I probably will. How are you guys? How's everyone's summer? Ooh, it's 11/11. Is anybody else like a woo-woo 11/11 person? My nieces and I always make wishes on 11/11. So I wish for you that you get something out of this podcast that just plants a seed in you to face your life and your dreams. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I have been so much of the recording that I do and the interviews that I do is inspired by the themes that come up in my own healing, but also the themes that come up in my work with clients as well. And a theme that's been coming up is this idea of ego-driven dream pursuits versus like soul callings and how to tell the difference and what happens when you get really, really stuck in fantasy, which I absolutely have. It was a very brilliant survival strategy that I adapted, that I cultivated as a kid who felt pretty trapped in her life. I was a big time dreamer. I was a big fantasy person. I mean, whether it was like constant movies, playing constant musicals, imagining I was in a movie myself, music playing all the time. Like I was just in my own dream world. And a lot of that was because my own actual life felt very disconnected. I felt really trapped. I felt really like, which I would not have been able to put it into language at the time, but there was a lot of disconnection in my household, well-meaning parents, a family that I still love and have a relationship with, but this is true for so many of us, very behavior-based parenting. And, I thought my worth was in what I did, combined with a lack of, emotional connection and intimacy in the culture that I grew up in, very, very, very conservative Christianity. And so my coping strategy was to imagine a world where I was so valued and always kind of my best friend and I, she's been on this podcast a lot, Stephanie. We talk about how our favorite fantasies as kids were the princess fantasies, but like movies like The Princess Diaries or even like Twilight, which actually came out later than when I was a kid. But that theme of like somebody who is just an average person and then this boy comes along or somebody chooses her and really sees her and she comes alive and we found out she was beautiful and amazing this whole time. That was a huge fantasy for me. And it took a long time for me. The fantasies kind of, they shifted and changed throughout my life, but I didn't realize I was really living from a place of fantasy, like well into my 30s. It just didn't look like fantastical, technicolor, musical fantasies. It looked more like being perfect enough to be finally noticed and validated, having a perfect, beautiful life and perfect family, even some really toxic like fantasy loops that I was just basically with the theme of wanting desperately to be chosen. And what would happen in my own nervous system was as I started to come back home to myself, I kind of had to grieve my fantasies, which is not something that I think is really talked about. The idea that sometimes not pursuing your dreams actually allows you to live in fantasy, which is what your inner child, what your heart is really used to. And so when you actually start to move towards your dreams and your dreams start to feel normal, then the whole like being rescued, being chosen, being someone's savior, all of those very young ideas, survival ideas, we don't need them anymore, which can kind of dysregulate your nervous system because it's like, well, if I don't need those anymore, then obviously this is not logical, but to a little kid, if we're saying like, no, you're home, you don't need to be rescued anymore, but they still feel really trapped in their home, it takes some inner child work, some shadow work to kind of teach your nervous system and the little kid within you that like, I'm not stuck anymore. And my dreams aren't this fantastical thing trying to pull me out of the doldrums of my life or the trauma of your life. They're actually just who I am. And sometimes they feel boring. Sometimes they feel fun. It doesn't really matter how they feel because they're just who I'm here to be. That's like kind of a mind F. Let's not cuss on today's episode. That's kind of it is a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people, and they might not even be able to put into words why that is. And so I feel like I have been able to support some of the most brilliant creatives over the last 5 years ever, like that just astonish and impress me. And they're so sensitive and incredibly talented. And I've seen what it looks like for them to keep pursuing a fantasy version of life and being continually disappointed, and getting confused between their actual dreams, their soul callings, and the fantasies that they think are going to rescue them from pain. And so I wanted to talk about that today. I want to talk about like what is the actual difference, because it gets confusing. It gets confusing out there. And okay, so I have some stuff written down I wanted to share with you. An ego-driven longing, desire, passion, dream versus a calling-driven longing, passion, desire, dream. Tough truth. I feel something I'm sorry to have to break it to you kind of thing. Only because I remember what it was like for somebody to suggest that the dreams that I have are from my ego or from a wounded place, and just how crushing that felt, because it felt like if it's from a wounded place, then it's never going to happen. And why are you taking this away from me? But there's good news, and I'm going to get to that. So an ego-driven longing has this sense of, I need this to feel worthy. There's like this urgency, this anxiety about like, I need to get there. We're grasping for this thing to come true so that we'll be okay. It's disconnected from the present in that you hate your normal life, or your normal life feels stressful, or your actual daily, everyday rhythms feel like survival. But then you like dream and imagine the future, and it feels like light and beautiful and connected and like everything that you've ever needed. It drains your energy to pursue this thing. That's something that is nuanced, because it will take energy for you to pursue anything. Anything worth pursuing will take energy. But if you're exhausting yourself for it, then that means that there's a part of you that thinks that you won't be okay if you don't have it. Your dreams actually avoid grief or discomfort. So, so many people that dream of the stage are trying to avoid that feeling of being so unseen. And so what's interesting about that is that the people that actually do get the stage, if that part of them is unhealed and they find themselves on a platform, they find themselves creating art that a lot of people are interested in, then their identity gets really confused, their safety gets really confused. And this is where we get, obviously, total artist burnout, addictions, artists that just burn down their lives because they've conflated their safety with the stage. They're getting developmental needs met through this thing. That doesn't mean that that's not their soul calling as well. But when it starts to feel like you're terrified of losing it because you won't be okay, that's how you know that it's actually filling a young part of you. How do we know if it's a calling-driven longing? A calling-driven longing, the more that you do your work to reinforce who you actually are, you bring in safety, you work with somebody that can mirror back to you the truth of who you are, your dreams will reflect who you already are. And that's kind of the most magical thing, and also kind of unglamorous. It can feel unglamorous because we have these dreams in the beginning because they're so different from who we are. And that's really can feel really intoxicating to like think about. And that was a huge part of my process, was like being so future focused and future driven. Because I didn't believe that I actually already was the things that I thought that dream would make me. What a mouthful, right? I have been so honored to support people it makes me emotional, to help them see who they already are outside of this thing coming true. Your dreams will be anchored to your values, to your truth. They will be in alignment. Like when you're regulated, you can be like, it makes all the sense in the world that I would do this. Absolutely. It gives you energy. It expands your energy. It's something that you are putting out energy to pursue, but you're also getting so much regulation from it. You find yourself in, what you could call a flow state, where you're kind of losing yourself in time. And this is nuanced. I don't mean losing yourself like you leave your actual life. I mean like you feel like you doing what you're supposed to do. It's a calling driven dream if your grief doesn't threaten it. So what I mean by that is the reason why this is called the heal create process is because in my own process and now working with so many people, I can't see the difference between creativity and healing. Prove me wrong. I can't see like how it could be any different, that you move towards your dreams and your dreams will always require your healing, and your healing will always make space for your dreams to come true because they're turning you into the person that can hold the dreams. So when you notice, which absolutely has happened to me, even this week, I've noticed something really, really big, kind of a transition type of thing happen within my family. And it sparked so much dysregulation for me. And I've had to return to my daily practice. You guys know I've been talking about my daily practice design guide, but truly I created that guide because it's been an anchor for me. So for myself, I've had to kind of return to this like, I am enough. Of course I am. Of course you are. I am okay. I'm safe in this moment. I'm totally safe. We're going to be okay. Things are just turning out in this one corner of our life differently than we thought. And so it's like kind of throwing my nervous system for a little bit of a loop, but it's not threatening who I am. It's no longer threatening if the things that I deeply desire and want are actually going to happen or are already happening. We're living in so many of the dreams, my husband and I, that we have talked about and designed. And that's how you know that you are pursuing a soul calling. It's kind of like if you have, well, maybe I should say, so how can I know then? I'm at the beginning of this journey, like if you're in that place where you're just like, I don't actually know if I am building my life out of fear or out of my own, fantasies, or if I'm just really actually like pursuing my soul's calling. And the good news or the bad news, depending on how this hits you, is that you won't know until you pursue it. You have to move forward in order to find the parts of you that are building your life out of fear. Bring them into love, let them know they're safe and okay now. And then you can reassess, is this thing that I'm building still something that I want to build, or was this a younger wounded part of me, and was this their dream? And I think it's not as tragic as it might sound. What it actually does is it relieves you this process of moving towards your dreams. If you do uncover these sort of ego-driven parts of you, which the ego is not bad. It's just this structure that we create internally in order that thinks it's going to keep us safe. So it doesn't know that we are safe, that we are the competent adults where everything is manageable. It doesn't know that yet. So we want to gently, I would say, dismantle the ego, but really we want to like integrate these scared parts of us so that we can really build our life from our actual identity, from our actual soul self. And so if you do meet parts of you, I'm trying to think of a good example. There's so many things in my life that I felt like had to happen. For a long time, because I was bullied as a kid, um, I really felt like if how's this for a fantasy? If I could be the most beautiful person in the room, then I would be safe. And it's in direct like comparison to how I felt as a kid, which was if I felt like the least beautiful person in the room and I felt rejected, I was constantly bullied. I was constantly made fun of because of it. And so my ego was like, okay, no problem. We'll just make you perfect. So in my 20s, I totally had an eating disorder. Obsessed with exercise, obsessed with beauty. I was just desperate to have this like disconfirming experience of being judged for my looks. I was a makeup artist for a while. Like I was really like in this world of beauty and obsessed with I would say like obsessed with fashion, but that's the thing is I was obsessed with looking perfectly, as if that was a thing. Dear young Courtney. I was obsessed with looking perfectly so that I could sort of get around ever feeling that same way. It never worked. It never worked because I wasn't healing the fear. I wasn't tending to the wounded part of me that was bullied in the first place. And so, which is a very layered thing, comes up in different ways and in different places. I was just actually, it's a rabbit trail, but I was just recording some videos with my friend, my brother friend, last weekend, and I changed like, I don't even know, like 5 times. It was just one of those days where I was just like, oh, it just doesn't feel right. I don't feel great. I'm like, oh, I feel kind of yuck. And I was like, this is totally that part of me. It's because I'm going to be on camera and it's because I'm going to be seen. And she's just so nervous about being judged again. And so I had to do some work around that part. Work for me looks like doing some visualizations, helping her feel deeply safe in a safe house with a really loving mom and dad. Maybe for you, it's, God the Father or, a safe grandma or whatever. Those visualizations are essential for me to rewire. And then also just doing some like somatic work around that, like helping myself get rid of that survival energy. All things that, I've talked about in past episodes, but that's a really good example of something that like the more that I pursued that, I mean, I might have called it like a passion with beauty and fashion, the more that I realized that it was her and the safer that I let her feel, the more that I was just like grounded in this truth that like, of course I'm beautiful because I am. Not because of how I look, but because I am. And it makes getting dressed so much easier because I'm like, well, how could I ever look like ugly? Because I'm a child of God. I'm a well-loved, beautiful daughter of God. I don't know if that sounds narcissistic to you, then you can judge however you need to. But it really, the more that I integrated the wounded parts of me, the more that I am genuinely interested in fashion for the expression of it. And I love taking care of my body. And I just genuinely feel a lot better about myself as a person outside of how I look. And this is an ongoing process. Of course, being a woman heading towards menopause is. But what I found was as I healed, it's not like I was like, oh gosh, I'm not even interested in like beauty or fashion or anything at all. The truth was that it was an even more like aligned dream, which was I'm very, very interested in expressing my healthy and embodied femininity. And fashion beauty, feminine embodiment is so, if you know, any of my friends would tell you, it is a core identity piece for me. It's one of the pillars of who I am, but it's not to become someone acceptable. It's because it's just an expression of my soul. And I know that now because I did the work to look at the part of me that was terrified of what would happen if I wasn't beautiful. The same is true for any dream. Any dream that you have, when you go to pursue it, you have to ask yourself, what am I terrified will happen if this doesn't come true? And what you'll find is these like behind the curtain, like puppet master parts of you that are actually like frantically afraid for you if this doesn't happen. And if we can soothe them, I think the fear is that if we do this work, we're going to lose our connection to our dream. But that's not what happens. What happens is you get to build from a place of rest and peace and authentic identity of like knowing who you actually are. I remember Laura Duncan, one of my mentors, telling me that she would have these like really high performing businessmen come in. And when they started doing work with her, which she, the compassion method is one of the certifications that I have from my time with her. When she would start doing this like inner child work through the compassion method, she said that she would have these high performing businessmen come in and be like, I just don't feel the same drive to like build my business. And it's freaking me out because how am I going to provide for my family? How am I going to, pay my employees if I'm not like motivated by fear? And she would always like, if you've met Laura, she's like, right, sure. Because she knew that the truth was like, you were never meant to create from fear. You were meant to create from authentic identity. And that's the thing. We were made to build. So sometimes when people are like, will I ever stop doing the work? Does the work ever end? I'm like, no, because we're here to grow. We're here to build. That's what we're here to do. It would actually feel wrong if you weren't building. If you weren't building something, pouring into someone else, pouring into your dreams and your growth, it would feel wrong, or it would feel like survival. I mean, how many of you know, like, if you actually watched Netflix and ate Cheetos all week long, I don't know why Cheetos came up. Gross. Or delicious. If you actually just watched Netflix and ate junk food all week long, like, you would be actually very miserable. And then even getting outside after a week of that feels horrible. But so you're here to build, but you're not here to build out of survival. You're here to build from your authentic self, from truth. That's what it is to be a healthy human. A healthy human naturally builds, not out of, not in a culture of survivalist capitalism, and not to escape our own pain, but from your authentic self. And the rhythm, of course, is we build and then we rest. And then we build and then we rest. So the work is not finished in the same way that you're never going to be finished loving your child. The work isn't finished in the same way that you're never going to be finished feeding yourself. No, the work isn't finished, because to be a human is to build. And it's really beautiful, beautiful thing to build when you know you're okay without needing to build. How's that for mind? What did I say? A mind F? A brain twist? Okay, I love you guys so much. Again, if you have seen, I have this daily practice design guide. It's $37. And some of the reviews, I was thinking about posting some of the reviews actually, because everybody loves the meditation. I love the meditation. I love being able to walk people through that even in person, but through visualization, meditation form is fantastic. Imagining your life 10 years from now is going to help you. Like, don't worry about whether your ego's designing this future or your soul self is calling, because your dreams will always require your healing. And if you know that going into it, then when healing opportunities come up and you notice frantic stress, you're going to have the tools to know what to do with that. But we start with grounding into the vision of who we're becoming, who we're here to be. So that visualization is really helpful. And then I help you through this PDF of like this basically menu of different options, help you design a daily practice specifically with that future in mind. Regulating your nervous system every single day, processing your emotions in a healthy way every single day, moving small, like taking small steps towards your goals, grounding yourself spiritually. It's vital, I think, especially right now when the world needs healthy creatives more than ever. I have to say, my friends call me Poppy because I'm like, if you've ever seen the movie Trolls, it's possible that there's some similarities, but I really am not just like this blind optimist. I really do believe in this message. I really do believe that the dreams, the way that God wants to change the world is in the dreams that won't let you go. Because at first they will heal you. And then when they are coming from an embodied place where you're not terrified that they won't come true, but you are compelled to move towards them because they're who you are, then they heal the world. Or maybe at least bring healing and regulation and beauty and connection to God into the world. So that's it. Hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.